There's a version of you that is exhausted, not physically, but emotionally, mentally, and internally. A version of you that fantasizes about disappearing for a while, getting away, escaping the pressure, the responsibilities, the sameness. And you've convinced yourself that if you could just escape, just run, just break free for a moment, you'd finally feel better. But here's the truth most midlife adults never discover. Your life doesn't need escape, it needs contrast. My name's Andrew, and today I'm going to show you why your soul keeps drifting towards escapism and how learning the art of contrast can actually give you the relief that you've been chasing for years. Let's have an honest talk for a moment or two about escapism. And to be honest, I'm a little bit of an expert in this regard. You see, I used to struggle like some of you presently do with constant fantasies about escapism. I used to be constantly dreaming about running away, finding a small town to live in, just trying to get away from all of the stuff. However, I learned as a young man, not only was it not working, it was actually making me worse. I want to get to the heart of the problem with too much escapism, because those of you who know what I'm talking about today will know there's actually a big difference between escapism and dreaming about your future. They're not the same thing, and they're not driven by the same thing. Let's talk about excessive escapism and where it actually comes from. The truth of the matter is that excessive escapism comes from the fact that we are in pain in our soul, and we're trying to use the fantasy as medication for the ache that we feel on the inside. You could have all kinds of different reasons that explain why a person's soul is in pain. They may have suffered trauma. They may have suffered loss in relationship. They may have suffered financial loss. They might be feeling very stuck in their career. They could be having serious mental health challenges. They might be facing a serious health challenge. Whatever it is, when people experience an overload of pain in the soul, the natural response or reaction is to want to find some kind of medication for that pain. Some people try to do it with a bottle. Some people try to do it with all kinds of other substances or other expressions that are excessive. Maybe with food, maybe with spending, maybe with gambling. However, the problem that continues to bring self-destruction is that the person moves from pain to medication, and then at its worst expression, they move to addiction. I want to help you stop short of ending up in some kind of addiction by dealing with your propensity to medicate, by dealing with the fact that you are focusing on escapism far too often. You see, our escapism, it doesn't deal with the pain, it just kicks it further down the road and makes certain that it comes back in a multiplied way at some other time. So let's get right to the heart of the issue here. If I'm going to help you to get out of this habit of constant escapism, we need something practical to actually become the hook that is a circuit breaker, stopping that bad habit of dreaming about some other fantasy life and escaping your own life. The big problem with escapism is that even if you could get to the place that you're trying to get to, the problem is that when you get there, you're there with you. And the same is true for me. We've got to deal with the pain on the inside rather than trying to escape the context that we're in. And so really, when it comes down to it, the solution to escapism is to learn the power of contrast. You know, our entire world, our entire ecosystem is built on the power of contrast. Imagine if we lived in a situation where it was daytime all the time. You would think to yourself, oh, that'd be great. I'd get so much done. I could enjoy so much more sunshine, more outdoor activities. Well, that might be true for a short period, but eventually your soul would begin to scream at you because you would be searching for some diminishing of the light, some downtime, some sleep time. We need light and dark. We need on and off. We need hot and cold. one of the big problems that people face with escapism is that they haven't learned how to access contrast in their life. They've got constant on or constant off, but we actually need the pairing of the two if we're going to be healthy in our soul. And so we need to have contrast in a few different areas if we're going to be healthy and successful. The first one is we need contrast in our diary or our calendar. If you don't learn the beautiful art form of putting stops into your diary, I can guarantee you will get to a point where your soul runs out of resources, you will be depleted, and then you will trick yourself into believing that the problem is where you are and what you do, and if you could just get away from those things, life would be better. No, you're suffering the consequence of neglecting the power of contrast. I've coached hundreds and even thousands of leaders during my career, and I've trained them in this idea that contrast has to live in our diary, and it's got to live in 3 spaces of time. It's got to live in our weekly routine, it's got to live in our quarterly routine, and it's got to live in our annual routine. In fact, recently, when I was the CEO of a large not-for-profit organisation, I mandated that all of my staff had to put these stops into their diary, and they had to be able to show evidence to me as their mentor that they'd actually put the stops in. Why? Because I am a huge believer, and I have experienced that unless you stop well, you will not go well. And so I used to challenge all of my staff and leaders, have you taken the equivalent of roughly a full day off in every roughly weekly cycle? At least one day in every 7 to 10 days. And then I would say, have you planned for a 2 to 3 day stop in every quarter? A weekend away with their spouse or with their children or with friends, a quarterly stop in order to switch off before they've got to be back on again. And then I used to mandate a minimum of a 2-week stop, usually at Christmas, New Year time, of 2 full consecutive weeks in a row in order to let their soul have off time. You've got to build contrast into your diary, otherwise you will get depleted, burned out, you'll start searching for medication for your soul, you'll probably end up in escapism, and you'll get worse and worse because you've missed the power of contrast. There's one other that I want to point out to you here that's so important, and it's this concept or idea of producer mode. Now, what I mean by producer mode is if you live in a situation either relationally or vocationally where you are required to be on for other people's benefit regularly, then that means the output flow of resources from your soul is higher than it is for a person who doesn't have to live in producer mode. I'm thinking of parents who have to be in output mode for their children. I'm thinking of managers and bosses at work who have to provide leadership for staff and team members. I'm thinking of those who are constantly engaged in activity where they are producing thoughts, ideas, training, support, encouragement, all of these things for the sake of building up other people. If that's you, that means you are a producer. And as a producer, your output flow is higher than a non-producer. And so you have to be more mindful of managing your soul resources. Otherwise, depletion sets in, burnout is looming, medication for the soul is desired, and we end up in escapism and addiction. The way that we can mitigate and short circuit ending up in that situation is learning to apply the power of contrast. And so for me, as a middle-aged man, a deeply middle-aged man actually, the comparison between now and when I was a younger man searching for escapism moments, I have learned that what my soul actually needs is the ability to apply these time stops and to be conscious of how often I'm engaged in producer mode activities. I guarantee you that if you could learn to apply the power of contrast to your situation, your soul will get a whole lot healthier in a hurry. You know, in my new training program, the True Self Transformation Program, which is a brand new course that I've just recently released, which is a comprehensive compilation of nearly 30 years mentoring people and training them in topics just like this one, is now available for you. There's a link in the show notes below, and if you click on that link, there's even a free lesson preview that you can take where you get a taste of the course. I'd love you to contemplate that. I guarantee that that will help you to change these kinds of habits and dozens more, getting you unstuck, getting you growing, and helping you to experience upgrade in all areas of your life. I hope you've heard something today that's helped you, an idea or two. Maybe you could drop that in the comments or put a question in the comments. I appreciate you taking the time, and I'll see you in another video real soon.